Volodymyr Zelenskyy was born on the 25th of January 1978 in Kryvyi Rih, a large industrial city in Ukraine. His family was not rich or politically powerful. They were an ordinary, educated, middle-class family living in a city of factories, mines, and hard work. His father was a university professor of computer science, and his mother was an engineer. At home there were books, education, and strong values. But there were no signs that this quiet boy would one day stand at the center of one of the biggest crises of the 21st century as president of his country. As a child, Zelenskyy loved to perform. At school, he enjoyed making classmates laugh, acting in small plays, and imitating voices. He was not the kind of student who dreamed only of numbers and formulas. He dreamed of stages, stories, and audiences. Still, he studied seriously and later went to university to study law. On paper, his path looked like it was heading toward a safe legal career, but his heart was pulled in a different direction, toward comedy, performance, and storytelling. When he was a teenager, he joined a famous comedy competition show in the region, where teams from different cities performed sketches and humorous routines. Zelenskyy quickly stood out. He was energetic, quick-thinking, and brave enough to look silly on stage if it made people laugh. Together with friends, he created a team that would later become the comedy company Wartime 95. They toured many cities and appeared on television. The young law graduate was spending more time on stage than in any courtroom. He had made a choice. Instead of arguing in front of judges, he would perform in front of cameras. Throughout the 2000s, Zelenskyy became one of the best-known comedians and producers in Ukraine. Wartime 95 produced comedy shows, stand-up programs, and films that were popular across the country. He often played ordinary people facing unfair situations, using humor to show the problems in society. Audiences loved him because he seemed close to them, speaking their language, sharing their frustrations, and laughing at the same everyday struggles. His work made him famous and financially successful, but it also gave him something more: deep understanding of what ordinary people were thinking and feeling in 2015. His life took an unexpected turn, at first only on screen. Zelenskyy starred in a television series called Servant of the People. In the show, he played a simple high school history teacher who became president of Ukraine after a video of him complaining about corruption went viral. The character was honest, ordinary, and angry at the dishonesty of the political class. People watched and thought, if only we had a president like this in real life. The series was a huge hit. Ironically, while playing a fictional president, Zelenskyy was still just a comedian and producer in real life. But the line between fiction and reality was slowly beginning to blur as the years passed. Ukraine continued to struggle with corruption, economic problems, and political disappointment. Many citizens felt tired of traditional politicians and empty promises. In this atmosphere, the idea that someone from outside politics could lead the country became more attractive. In 2018, members of Zelenskyy's team registered a real political party with the same name as the TV show, Servant of the People. At first, many people laughed and thought it was just a publicity trick. But as rumors grew that Zelenskyy might actually run for president, the joke began to look serious. On New Year's Eve at the end of 2018, while the country was watching television, Volodymyr Zelenskyy officially announced that he would run for president of Ukraine. The comedian had become a candidate. He presented himself as an anti-corruption outsider, someone who was not part of the old political clubs and business networks. His campaign used social media, short videos, and modern communication instead of traditional rallies and long speeches. Many people, especially young voters, felt that he represented a fresh start. Others were unsure. Could a comedian really run a country? In 2019, Zelenskyy won the presidential election by a huge margin. More than 70% of voters chose him in the second round, a landslide victory. The same face that people had seen making jokes on television was now taking the oath as the real president of Ukraine. For some, it was an inspiring sign that politics could change. For others, it was a risky experiment. As president, he promised to tackle corruption, bring peace to the eastern regions where there was conflict, and modernize the state with digital systems and more transparency. During his early time in office, he focused on reforms like simplifying government services, making more processes available online, and trying to negotiate a peaceful solution to the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine. He met foreign leaders, visited the front line, and tried to balance expectations at home with pressures from abroad. It was not easy. Some praised his energy and communication. Others criticized his inexperience and questioned his decisions. But nothing in those first months could have prepared him or his country for what would come next. In February 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Missiles fell on cities, tanks crossed borders, and millions of Ukrainians woke up to war. At that moment, many observers expected the comedian-turned-president to flee to safety. Instead, Zelenskyy stayed in Kyiv, the capital. He filmed short videos on his phone in the city streets and in government buildings, telling the world that he was still there. He stood alongside his team in simple clothes, no special stage, no studio lights, just a city under threat and a leader who refused to leave. In these days, his voice changed from that of a comedian to that of a wartime leader. He spoke to his people with honesty about the danger, but also with determination about their strength. He addressed foreign parliaments by video, wearing a simple t-shirt, asking for support, sanctions, and solidarity. His speeches were not polished theater scripts. They were urgent messages from a country fighting to survive. The skills he had learned on stage, how to communicate clearly, how to read an audience, how to use simple images, were now being used to hold a nation together and move governments across the world, around the world. Many people who had never heard of him before the war suddenly knew his name and face. He became a symbol of resistance, courage, and national pride. However, behind the symbol was a human being, a husband, a father, an actor who had once played a pretend president and was now living the role for real under far more dangerous conditions. He slept in secure locations, moved carefully because of assassination attempts, and spent endless hours in meetings with military commanders and diplomats, deciding on issues that meant life or death for thousands. At the same time, Zelenskyy's presidency remained complex. Even during the war, there were debates and criticisms. Some questioned certain political decisions, the handling of corruption, or the concentration of power around his inner circle. International investigations and documents had earlier raised questions about offshore companies connected to his business past, which critics used to challenge his anti-corruption image. Leading a country in war does not freeze all criticism. It often increases it. His story, like that of many leaders, includes both admiration and serious questions that historians will study for years. Yet, when we look at his journey as a story of riches, the real riches are not material. Zelenskyy already had fame and money from his entertainment career before he entered politics. He could have continued making films, shows, and tours. Instead, he took on a role that brought stress, risk, and responsibility on a scale few can imagine. He exchanged the safe laughter of the stage for the real tears and fears of a country at war. His greatest wealth became the trust of millions of people who looked to him in their darkest hours. For your viewers, the powerful part of Volodymyr Zelenskyy's journey is the transformation. He did not start as a general, a longtime politician, or a member of an old political dynasty. He started as a performer who understood people's hearts. Step by step, he moved from telling stories about a better Ukraine on screen to trying to build that better Ukraine in reality. When the greatest test came, he did not run away. Whether one agrees with all his policies or not, his decision to stay, to speak, and to lead under bombardment is a clear example of inner courage. His story teaches that talents we often think are small, like making people laugh, communicating clearly, or understanding emotions, can become powerful tools in the biggest crises. It reminds us that leadership is not only about titles or technical knowledge, it is also about presence, clarity, and moral choice when it matters most. The boy from an industrial city who studied law but chose comedy ended up in a place no scriptwriter could fully predict, leading his nation through war. With the whole world watching in the end, The riches in Zelenskyy's life, as shown in your video, are the riches of character, resilience, the ability to adapt, the willingness to stand where it is most dangerous, and the courage to turn a life of performance into a life of service. His journey from comedian to wartime president is not simply about fame rising to a new level. It is about a man discovering how deep his responsibilities can go when history suddenly knocks on his door.